Game 3, the Pacers were up 10 at halftime. They had to be feeling good, and oh, God. Oh, boy, that second half, a nightmare for the Pacers. They get crushed for the last 2 quarters. They have a lot to think about. Bad on both ends. They lose by nearly 20 in Game 3. So much to get to on today's Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Saturday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today we're in Fiserv Forum, where the Pacers just played a really solid first half, a really great close to the first half, and an awful, god-awful, oh no, what's happening? Is this actually alarming? Is this a bad sample level second half that deserves a ton of scrutiny and all of the focus of today's show? Fans in a great mood in my mentions at halftime of this game. The Pacers were up by 10, a 31-21 second quarter. The game flipped on its head immediately as the Bucks rolled in the second half and ended up winning by 16 points. They were up as many as well over 20 in the second half. I believe their peak lead was somewhere like 24, 22 is the answer in the middle of that fourth quarter. So the Pacers, the start of this game has to all be that second half. What just happened? What on earth just happened to the Pacers in that half? Because I wanted to go, oh, this was an offense thing to me. They scored 19 in the third quarter. That's rough. You know, you got to be better than that. Two of their best players weren't doing anything. 18 in the third, excuse me. Only 26 in the fourth. Like, those are very substandard quarters for the Pacers. They were, 115, 117 in game one, and then 123 in game two. Like, that's not going to cut it. But they also gave up 70 points in the second half. And so there's kind of two things I thought of when I wanted to talk about this. One is the snowball effect that the Bucks Pacers games have seen throughout the season, which I can get to in a second. But I really felt like the offense was more concerning to me, right? It's very easy to shrug off Gary Trent making a ton of shots, and I don't think anyone should do that, and I'll explain why later. But it's very easy to kind of just be like, oh, Gary Trent made, 9 threes and was, Ray Allen level shooter in this game. Giannis was as good as he's always been, but that happens. And I think the Pacers have a lot of defensive issues that they need to fix, and I will talk about that. But to score 18 points in a quarter, this Pacers team, I mean, that just what are they going to – their identity is scoring. What are they going to do? And so here's what I felt like happened in the second half. One is they weren't getting enough from Haliburton. 0 points, 2 assists, 1 turnover in that third quarter. He was a minus 21 in the quarter as he played a ton of minutes. But they just couldn't get their pace down, right? If you've been listening to basically every show I've done this entire series, I've talked about pace a lot. After game one, Thomas Bryant said, we gotta be better with our pace. And I thought that was very fascinating to hear. You never hear the Pacers think they're playing too slow, but then you look at the numbers, it was one of their worst 15 games pace-wise the whole season. Game two, similar story. Rick Carlisle mentions pace after the game. And I dove into the numbers. I talked about this with Ty Windish yesterday. I talked about it on a couple adjustment shows. Their seconds per offensive possession in games 1 and 2 were among their longest. And in fact, first and second, the whole season. It took them forever to get into their shots. Now, to the Pacers' credit, in games 1 and 2, they would work the clock, work their possession, and eventually get to a mismatch they liked, an advantage they liked, or just something would break down for the Bucks that they created, to be clear, and they would find a good shot. But that made me wonder with Ty yesterday a little bit, like, man, are the Bucks just like one good rotation more of defense away from really having the Pacers in a bind? And that's what the second half felt like to me, is the Pacers could not get into their stuff fast enough for whatever reason, right? Their first action cut off, second action cut off, third action cut off, and then they'd be ready for the next thing in these last couple of games. This game, Siakam was hitting stuff. He was awesome in a lot of moments of this game, but they couldn't quite get an advantage that they were happy about or could flow into after that moment. And that's why their offense felt so stagnant to me. So many shots deep in the clock, so many shots that are being forced up, and they only made 6 the whole quarter, 1 of 9 from deep, and they'll be happy with their quality of shots. Their Pacers are always happy with, their 3-point quality, but the fourth quarter didn't feel like a ton changed there, right? They shot better that quarter. They were 5 for 9 from deep to keep up, but it took 5 threes to score 26 points. They had 6 turnovers, right? Like, it was just very un-Pacers-y what they were doing on offense. And so there's a couple ways to look at this. One would be, did the Bucks do something different that actually stymied the Pacers, slowed them down in a way that makes them go, oh boy, they got to adjust to this or that, right? And I would say maybe is my answer to that question, which is a bad answer. But, they changed their starting five. We'll get to that. Gary Trent started, but the group that played a ton for the Bucks in the second half was Giannis, Trent, Lillard, AJ Green, Bobby Portis, a.k.a. what many have been saying is their best group for a while. They were switching a lot more, and it's fascinating to say that because I mentioned after game 2, it felt like, the switching was actually hurting the Bucks a lot of time. Brook Lopez would end up on bad matchups, and that happened again in the second quarter. He played 4 minutes and 37 seconds, a few moments where Myles Turner was getting past him, took him out of the game for Bobby Portis, which actually didn't really help the Pacers, right? Brook Lopez played 4 minutes, 37 seconds the entire second half. Bobby Portis played 16 minutes and 58 seconds. And the Bucks did well in Lopez's minutes, but it feels like the switching between Lopez and Lillard and all that, the Pacers can find advantages. And they did in game 2, right? That was a key stretch, that early third quarter stretch where the Pacers expanded their lead. Today, even with the Bucks switching more, it wasn't helping as much. So I heard a lot of analysis of the series talking about, the Bucks should keep switching more. And they did. And I kept thinking that analysis was going to be wrong. I thought, the Pacers have handled that very well. They've handled every Bucks defense extremely well. They've been very prepared. They've moved the ball well. They just kept flowing from action to action to action. And in this game, that switching really slowed them down. They weren't getting into the paint enough, and when they were passing out of some floaters or layups that they typically like to shoot. Haliburton, obviously the biggest culprit of that, but even like Myles Turner, Obi Toppin, like guys that take those shots, contested or not, were getting rid of the ball in the paint. That was very surprising to see, and some of that is the way they've been playing in the series. They keep the Bucks in rotation. They move, pass, boom, boom, something's open. Yeah, I get the instinct to do that. It's been working. They had to get something going at the rim in this game, and it never felt like they did, even when they would get to the rim on those rare chances. In this game, the Pacers finished with 34 points in the paint, a shockingly low number for the way they want to play. So that's part of this, is the shot quality. The shot diet that they typically want just wasn't quite there for them, and that leads to snowballing out to threes. But they weren't getting into the paint, period, enough to me in that second half. Almost half their shots were threes. That's fine, like on its own. That's not a bad thing. But, when you're not finishing in the paint, they were 10 for 20 on twos, 6 for 18 on threes. No, that's bad. But when it comes with more turnovers because you're passing out of too many drives, when you're not actually generating that many free throws from said rim pressure, like so many things that I consider staples of what the Pacers want to do weren't there. And the Bucks were, in some ways, because they were switching a lot, actually limiting those things. So if I'm the Pacers looking at game 4 adjustments, especially in the offensive end, I'm looking at what about their switching really bogged us down, right? Why couldn't we get to the rim, or why were we so stagnant off of those? Because that was the other word a lot of players, I can't remember if Rick Carlisle said it or not, used after the game, was stagnant, right? They didn't quite have the flow and passing and just like rhythm that their offense can have for a lot of the second half. The first half, it was, this is somewhat results based, but like they didn't even shoot that well in the first half. Their offense didn't feel that good. They shot 30% from deep, but 46% from the field in the first half, only 5 free throws. Their offense didn't feel that awesome in the first half. Aaron Nesmith was amazing. We'll talk about him later. Siakam was pretty good. Everybody else was pretty pedestrian, but at least felt like process-wise they were getting shots they wanted early in the clock. The second half, that was just not there at all, right? Not there at all, regardless of who was on the floor. Yes, I will talk about rotations. I'm well aware that they are a big story of this game, but the story of this game is, for the first time of the series, the thing that the Pacers were doing so well in games 1 and 2, going through their offense, flow, easy, wide open shots all the time, that went away in the second half of this game, and they only scored 40 whatever points in the half. They will not win playing that way. They just won't. The Magic aren't their opponent. They're just not going to win. Now, their defense also was not awesome, right? And, Gary Trent was amazing. I'm not going to belittle that at all. 7 for 8. He had 24 points in the second half. At one point, very late in the third quarter, he was outscoring the Pacers by himself, 18-16. Incredible. He can have good games that aren't quite at that level, right? He can hit 5 or 6 threes and still be very good. So here's what I would say about this Trent game. Obviously, this is like the most extreme apex version of what a shooter killing a team can do, what shooting variance from one player can do. But I think a lot of people I've seen or have read someone say, oh, well, Gary Trent won't shoot that well again. No problem, right? That'll regress. Like the Bucks besides him were bad from 3. They were 6 for 29 besides Gary Trent from 3 in this game. The Pacers should be thrilled with that. The Bucks in total this game had a worse 3-point percentage than in game 2 and worse than their season average. Even if Trent goes way down, the rest of the Bucks, Dame was 1 for 8. Portis was 0 for 4. Taurean Prince missed his only attempt. Brook Lopez missed all 3 of his attempts. They could easily be just as good shooting as a team in general. So I would not point just at Gary Trent's shooting and say fluke, whatever. Like, one, the Bucks can absolutely shoot better as a team. 2 is this is the 3rd straight game where a Bucks role player has been great from deep, right? Game 1, AJ Green, 5 for 11 from deep, got really hot in the 4th quarter. Pacers dodged some bullets late in that game. Game 2, Portis made 6, I believe. I can't remember how many attempts he had. He got hot late, got the Bucks back into the game. And tonight it was Gary Trent in the second half. Like, I think this is going to be something that Pacers are battling the whole series. What I mean by that is, after game 1, you can go back and listen to my Adjustments podcast. I talked about this. I asked Pascal Siakam, what do you guys need to do better next game? Still have it in the notes here. He said, we've got to get out to shooters better. Get to shooters. And that was after a game where the Bucks were terrible shooting, besides AJ Green, right? They were under 30% from deep in that game. Pascal recognized this very early. This is why he's much better than, obviously he's much better than me at analyzing the game. He plays the game. Game 2, they were not great at it. They didn't get as lucky. The Bucks made 40%, but the Pacers shot 1-1. And then game 3, the Bucks got Gary Trent going. The Pacers have to be better rotating out to shooters, and that was a big problem they had in the second half, as the Bucks offense was just sensational. The second half of this game, after a terrible shooting first half, the Bucks were 11 for 18 from deep as a team. Only 6 turnovers. They were just phenomenal in that second half offensively. So the Pacers have to figure that part of defense out. And here's the problem. The way they defend Giannis makes that so hard. Right, there was one Gary Trent 3. Dustin O'Perek sitting next to me with the Indy starter in the game. They double Giannis up high, and Gary Trent's in the opposite corner. And it wasn't even one Giannis pass across the floor to him. I said, uh-oh, someone's out of rotation. Nesmith and I think Siakam were the 2 that doubled Giannis on that play. And Nesmith was the only guy who recognized Gary Trent was open. He ran across the floor to try to contest his 3. Like, it should be an X out, like someone on the weak side who is guarding 2 guys in theory. He gets out to Trent, Nesmith gets to the other guy when the pass is made, or just something else. It cannot be that he has to recover from that double all the way across the floor 2 passes away. I'm not saying that was their game plan. I think they messed up on that possession, but like that's just one play that really highlights the issue of they could not get out to shooters in this game or in the series at the level that they need to. And that all became part of a snowball effect. They couldn't get the stops. And we've seen this against the Bucks. When the Bucks can set their defense, the defense is good enough. Ty Windish talked about that yesterday. Their best defense can be their offense. He was all over it, right? He nailed it for what you can expect from the Bucks in this game. So as the Pacers tried to get flowing in their offense to have the same effect where they were scoring so the Bucks couldn't score, and while they tried to get out to shooters and they tried to slow Giannis, do all these things that they've done good enough in this series to this point, they were up 2-0 for a reason. They couldn't at all. Disaster second half for the Pacers. They end up losing the second half by almost 30 points. They were up 10 at halftime. Like they had to be feeling good. 70-44, 26-point deficit in one half. That's rough. That is a tough half for the Pacers. It is one half of a 3-game series, right? They had a second half of game 2, but other than that, they had to be feeling good about how they're playing and the samples of what they've done today. They've got to think, all right, we've got to change some stuff. And they did change some stuff in this game that was confusing, and they need more from Haliburton and Turner. And we still have so much to discuss from game 3 on today's Locked On Pacers. Before we get to any of that, we got to talk about Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where'd all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, entertainment, it is easy to lose track. That is where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. They offer surprising insights like how much you're spending on food delivery or many other categories. You can budget smarter and save more by realizing what those numbers end up being. They have a ton of convenience. So you don't have to juggle multiple apps. You can use Monarch to track your spending, plan long-term goals, check your finances. It's so easy to plan with your partner with collaboration on Monarch Money as well. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off of your first year. Back here on Locked On Pacers, thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Make your second listen Locked On Bucks. Justin and Camille will take you through the Bucks' perspective of the first win they have seen in this series. Pacers were undefeated in games. They won game 3 last year. That was a very confusing sentence, and they lost to the Celtics after losing game 3 in that series. Obviously different circumstances, but this is a new territory for them. What does game 4 look like after this? I'll be fascinated to see. All right, the big thing fans were discussing that I did not consider the biggest story of the game, but obviously was a big story in general, was the rotations. Ooh, Very different, right? First two games nearly identical. So let's zoom out and talk this through like adults, please. Okay. Thing one, I have to start here so no one comes with the pitchforks before I even get going. I did not think the rotations were very good today. Okay. They deserve ridicule and criticism. Thing two, obviously they're going to change. The Bucks changed their rotation. They had different matchups on the floor with Gary Trent out there. Different ball handlers are with the second unit now. There's going to be some little shifts that come with that. Okay. That's expected. Thing three, no one complained about the rotation of the first half when the Pacers were winning. Not no one, like one person, right? Okay, but like keep it straight. You have to recognize it as a problem before it's actually a problem for me to actually take you seriously. That said, I did not think it was good in this game. The scratchers were the no Nesmith Siakam lineups, which were very infrequent, but did happen. Like they're really struggling with Giannis defense at that point. A lot of questions about Ben Shepherd playing. They won his minutes by 3. That's not necessarily because he was like terrific or anything, but he played fine. Ben Shepherd played 15 and a half minutes in this game. The first time he came in right after Caitlin Cooper tweeted, hey, maybe Ben Shepherd could come in here. Right? Like there was clearly a reason for it at the time. I'm going to go find her tweet. I asked her Carlisle about the rotations after the game. He just said coach's decision, right? Nothing spectacular in terms of analysis there. He had more of her on Ben Shepherd later. Caitlin said, Nesmith is guarding Giannis while Siakam's on the bench. Nembhard trying to avoid picking up his third foul. Might need to give Shepherd a look against Dame, right? Shepherd, the team's probably third best perimeter defender, and they did. They brought in Shepherd there. Dame did not have a great game. He might have a good game later in the series, by the way, which is why the Pacers should be very afraid of him at some point. But Shepherd came in and was doing that. And he made his 3 in the first half. He made a mid-range shot in the second half. I'm not saying he played good. I'm just describing some things that he did in this game. That's why I think he played at all. Some people wondering why he played over Jarris, because he's a better perimeter defender than Jarris. Jarris is a better Giannis defender, certainly. Jarris did not play in this game, so that was a shift. Shepherd was playing. Jarris was not. Ben Mathurin only played 13 and a half minutes. He had a boneheaded tech walking in front of a free throw shooter, but I thought was playing awesome in the first half of this game, made all of his twos, putting pressure on the rim, right? I thought that was his best half of the series in the first half, followed by a very blech half. Look, a lot of the rotation questions to me are one about Shepherd, which that's why he played in the first half. A lot of his minutes in the second half that's where it got confusing to me, is when they were using him like as trying to be a shooter with some bench heavier groups. That's tough. He hasn't made enough shots to really justify that role yet. And then the other part of this that's fascinating is a lot of Thomas Bryant in this game. Now, we haven't gotten to something else that was a factor. Myles Turner, not a good, his worst game of the series, probably his worst playoff game in the last 2 seasons for Myles Turner. And yet, a lot of Thomas Bryant, 21 and a half minutes of Thomas Bryant, a lot of minutes against Giannis for Thomas Bryant. The Pacers won Thomas Bryant's minutes, but I don't think anybody considers that a reflection of how awesome or terrible he was in this game. I don't think he was awful, but I think he certainly could have been better at times. Like his defensive, he is probably of their front court guys who have played, who had a role in defending Giannis in some way. Probably the worst to me in just general team awareness. Like he can do the Giannis part of it, but once he has to come out of it and do something else, whether that's defending another action or defending a different player, that's where he's like turning his head a lot, or is a step slower than everybody else. So the offensive part of this was fine, I guess. He made a 3, he had 4 boards, he had 2 assists, but 2 turns. Like it has a lot of Thomas Bryant. TJ McConnell, I mean, he did a lot of little things very well in this game, right? There's a reason he played 16 and a half minutes, but a lot of the big stuff was just, he had a left-handed layup that didn't even hit the rim. He missed another lefty layup a few possessions later. He missed all of his shots. In fact, on 0 points from TJ McConnell in this game. I mean, they played a lot of those guys, right? They relied on them a lot. And so there were a lot of units that had too many of those guys on the floor. And it was kind of clear as they were coming in that there either wasn't enough shot creation, or there wasn't enough shooting, or there wasn't enough defense, right? But those groups kind of worked in the first half. Some of that was the Bucks missing a lot of stuff and the Pacers dodging bullets, but some of that was actually some successful moments there. So I don't think the rotation was good in this game, right? They changed a lot of things. The pattern started the same, and then immediately, Bryant coming in for Myles Turner after 6 minutes in both halves as Turner had a bad night. The Shepherd at all. I mean, he didn't come in for the first time until late in the half for Nembhard, but it just was very, very different, and had some lineups that you walk out of the game going, wow, they had what plus minus? Like it was just very peculiar to see it shifted so much after a good start. So the Bucks forced them to make some changes by changing their own lineups. The Bucks forced them to change some changes due to foul trouble and how the Pacers are themselves defending Giannis with Nesmith or with Siakam. Like I get how they start to make the decisions they made, but the Pacers were not quick enough to pull the plug on errors that they were making rotationally, getting back to their stars, right? 24 minutes for Turner, 31 and a half for Haliburton. Like, no, I get that there was 5 minutes of garbage time in this game, so those numbers are going to look a little lower, but there were just some lineups that were very confusing. -10, Toppin, basically the starters with Toppin for Siakam was very poor in this game. The starters themselves are -8 in this game, but Shepherd, Mathurin, Haliburton, Bryant, Siakam. So the 2 stars and 3 bench players was -5. They didn't have any groups besides that one I mentioned. The starters were -8, and then Nesmith, Haliburton, Toppin, Nembhard, Turner was -10. No other group was worse than -5, and I already ran through it. Like, they had a lot of groups that just had like pockets of poor play, but they only played like 2 or 1 minutes. They needed those pockets to be better, and none of them were good. They had very few groups that were actually significantly positive outside of the group that closed the first half, which was Haliburton, Nesmith, Shepherd, Toppin, and Turner. So here's what I think. I think reactions to the rotation are a little bit overblown. Even though I don't think it was very good in this game, and it will certainly be tweaked in the next one. However, you know what helped the rotation a lot? If 2 of the 3 Pacers' best players were way better, way better in this game. Myles Turner, great playoffs last year, good first 2 games of the series, 0 for 6 from deep, 1 didn't even hit the rim, 1 for 9 in general. He made 4 free throws, that's great. 6 points on 9 shots is not going to cut it. 4 turnovers. Oof. I mean, a big part of the series to me that he had a couple nice passes against the zone in this game that I even put in my notes. Like, man, Myles Turner's short roll decision-making and passing has been good. Like, the Bucks are really scared of him in the pick and pop to open this game. It's opening up a lot for the Pacers. And eventually they just kind of stopped being afraid of that, and Turner could not punish them. I asked him straight up after the game, like, you happy with your shots? Was it something about your shots that made this troublesome night for you? He said, I love them, right? He just didn't make them. I asked Haliburton the same thing after game 1, and he did make them in game 2. We'll see. But Turner giving you that many turnovers and 8 missed shots was really tough. I mean, I think he would even acknowledge it was a poor game from him, on a very poor game for him on the offensive end. And he tried to beat some switches with Brook Lopez in the second half, drew some fouls. Like, that was there for him, but not a good game from him. That no matter, right? They have other 4 starters who can be good. None of them were effective enough. As Justin Garcia of Locked On Bucks walks right past me. Don't forget to listen on Bucks for more analysis of this game. Haliburton 5 for 11 in this one. Didn't get inside the paint for anything. 1 for 2 on 2s, no free throw attempts. Yes, he had 10 assists, only 1 turnover. Yes, he had 7 boards. Like, a lot of the little stuff was good. The offensive prowess, and by the way, 2 of his threes, I believe, were very late and like irrelevant to the results of the game. I'm going to check. Yeah, he made 2 for 2 in the fourth quarter when the game was already decided. So prior to that, he was 3 for 9 from the field. Like, just not a night that looked particularly effective for Haliburton on the offensive end. And what had people scratching their heads, rightly to me, was he had a lot of moments where he'd get in the paint and he would jump and he would kick it out, and like wasn't even looking at the rim. 2-point attempts, as I just mentioned. I think a lot of you who listen to this get sick of me doing it, but like, his best games, his very, very best games, and like, he would, if he could do this every game, he would, right? But his very, very best games, he often takes 6, 8, 10, whatever, 2-point attempts. 10's very rare, but you know what I'm saying? Much more than 2. Whether that's because the team's defense is not capable of stopping him in there, whether that's him being assertive with the finishes. I think he'll look back on this game and go, oh man, the balance wasn't there. And he had one in the first half for sure that was just like, wow, that one, I'm stunned he didn't take it. Not even a floater, just like anything at the rim. So they need Turner and Haliburton to both be much better. I thought Siakam, for some good stuff that the Pacers will be happy with, Siakam was amazing. I mean, in the second half, the only reason this game wasn't a 20-point deficit for the Pacers significantly earlier was Siakam was rolling tough bank shots, isoing, scoring on everybody. 12 for 19 from him this game. He made 3 threes. He was sensational. Tough to lose on a night where he was that good, but alas, such is life for the Pacers. Aaron Nesmith was amazing in the first half of this game. He was the only person who could make threes on either team. He finishes with 18, 7, 3, 2 steals in this one. It was a shame that they lost such a great Nesmith game. In the first half, he was +7, 6 for 9, 3 threes. He had almost half the Pacers threes and almost equaled the Bucks and made threes on his own. +6 rebounds, plus awesome defense in this game. Those 2 were awesome. The best Giannis defenders were also sensational on offense. Andrew Nembhard was not making shots in this game, but I thought played very good defense as well and had 5 assists, no turnovers. But they need any of the Turner, Nembhard trio, Turner, Nembhard, Haliburton, my gosh, trio to be much better offensively and actually make some shots. I think that would paper over a lot of people's rotational concerns, because then lineups featuring those guys are not even that threatening offensively, right? That's also a big problem for this game. So much you could point to as the issues, so much the Pacers have to look at adjustment-wise. I have so many notes that I haven't even touched on. I already talked about the Myles thing. Tyrese didn't see any space in this game through the first 4 minutes. I think that was part of his hesitancy in the lane, is like he couldn't find the space for a while. And then when he did, he was determined to get his teammates going. It wasn't really there. The Dame Giannis two-man game was causing the Pacers problems. I thought Dame's defense was better than his offense. He looked a lot better. I'd be worried about him getting going from a scoring perspective as the Pacers. And the Bucks had this thing going where AJ Green inverted pick and roll with Giannis was really helping with Green as the handler and Giannis setting the screen. That's something that's going to be, something the Pacers have to figure out. Shooters in general have caused problems. It was 5 for 35 combined shooting from both teams in this game. I think the Pacers should have been panicking a little bit more, and it didn't feel like this at the time, but that they couldn't. They were only up a little when the Bucks were so terrible from 3 early, and they were 4 for whatever at halftime from deep, and the Pacers were only up 10. It felt like the Pacers were playing well-ish at the time, but it should have been more alarming that the lead was so small. Lo and behold, the Bucks got rolling. They caught right back up. And there's a lot that the Pacers need to be better in the next game. We'll have a preview podcast for said game tomorrow with a guest, hopefully timing permitting, which should be wonderful. Hoping to have Kyle Taylor on to talk game 3 heading into game 4, and then Sunday night right here in this building, 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. Game 4 of Pacers Bucks. I'll be there, hopefully podcasting from this very seat. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. I probably said a lot of things that made people mad because that's what happens when the Pacers get clobbered in important games. You can yell at me on Twitter or Blue Sky at Tony Tyrese. This podcast has a Twitter account as well at Locked On Pacers. Thank you guys so much for listening today. Back tomorrow with more from the series. Till then, everybody have a wonderful day.